Just love to get your attention there for a sec, lads. We'll kick things off. Just to start off, I'd like to say thanks a million for everyone for turning up, particularly the attendance, but our special guests in particular. It's great to see a panel assembled. I think we can all agree it's a top-class panel, professional broadcaster. Thankfully, I only have a couple of sentences to say myself, and I leave it in the hands of the professionals. But a big thanks to everyone involved. Richard behind the scenes, the Lighthouse restaurant staff here, Billy, Rebecca, Alan, all the crew behind the scenes. And there's been a lot of work gone into it, so I hope you get a lot out of it. It's probably part of our community health and well-being committee. Our first initiative, our first kind of big initiative. We've been running a couple of things over the last couple of years, healthy walks, or over 35 football tournaments, bits and pieces like that. We're after registering on the Healthy Club initiative. There's lots of things going on. As everyone knows, when you're in a club, there's lots of things going on the pitch, but there's even more going on behind it, and there's lots of work being done. So it's great to see support here this morning for the club. We really appreciate it. Just in terms of the club, I suppose, for anyone who's not 100% au fait with Gaultier GA Club, we're a senior football club based here in Dunmore East. We cater for football for all the people in the barony of Gaultier, so that stretches from Dunmore East here out to Balmacaw, in as far as Ballygunner, Fayleg, Passage, Sheep Point. Big area, a lot of people to look after. Our underage success is kind of unparalleled the last few years in the county. Our teams are going to fail at under 14 level. We've won under 15 competitions in Munster. We're really pushing hard. All the work has been done behind the scenes. The senior football team is going well. The junior team will live to fight another day after last night's defeat. But it's, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work being done. We're proud to be associated with the club. We've lots of stuff going on. Our AstroTurf development is starting this week. The good news is the contractors, the diggers will be in. The preparatory work on the AstroTurf, the floodlit AstroTurf training pitch will be started next week, just for all your attention. A lot of work on in behind the scenes there. So without further ado, I'd like to say again thanks to the panel for everyone's attendance. And I leave you over to Ger from Off the Ball and News Talk FM. I should leave you in his capable hands. Thank you very much.
I'll give that to you there, Colin. Today's topic is resilience, and I'm not sure that a football club which thrives in the midst of a hurting heartland like this can learn too much about resilience from us, but we'll try our best this afternoon. If anybody has any questions across the day, rather than wait to the end when you might have forgotten what it was about, just stick your hand up in the middle of it and we can be as informal as we want here, because I think everybody's going to be able to hear, and I'm really looking forward to the insights of our guests. Our first speaker though is Colin Regan, who's here to talk about the Healthy Club Initiative and a little bit more about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Colin is an inspirational speaker who's had a key role in the evolution of the GAA from a sports organisation into a sports and cultural organisation that has an impact at community level right across the country. So we're very privileged to have him here today. Colin.
Thanks very much, Ger. It's an absolute privilege to be down here today. The fact that I'm attending a wedding this afternoon in the Haven has nothing to do with the fact that I said yes to be here. No, honestly, my wife is from just out the road, so it's always great to get back down to this neck of the woods. I'm a Melvin Gales club man at the most northern outpost of Leitrim. We're on the coast up there as well. That's that famous little coastline of 3 miles that we have, and I have never seen the sea looking that calm in North Leitrim. The Atlantic just doesn't look like that up our neck of the woods. I was fortunate enough to represent my club for 25 years at adult level and my county for 15 years. I often say it was a time when it was harder to get off the team than to get on it. And I was told if I had my boots here this night I might have got a game as well with the juniors, but unfortunately only made it down this morning. But my role with the GAA basically is community and health manager, and it's about trying to support our clubs like this great club here in becoming more than just a place where players gather to play our great Gaelic games, that they become community clubs as well. And Rob mentioned the Healthy Club project. It started up in 2013 with just 16 clubs, and basically it's about trying to work with clubs to become hubs for health within their community. There's 150 clubs involved at the moment, and we'll be growing that to 300 come January 2020, and we'll be delighted to have this club involved. Aoife, actually, as part of her time in Waterford IT here in the Centre for Behavioural Health Research, evaluated phases 1 and 2 of the Healthy Club project. And while they found that it's a very good thing to do in terms of supporting the health of members of our communities beyond just the playing of Gaelic games, it's also a very beneficial thing for the club that is involved as well, because the research showed that it helped grow membership, it helps attract new volunteers in, and we know in the GA or in any community group now, volunteer burnout is probably more real than player burnout. And a more pertinent issue. Trying to get new blood in is important. It helped clubs access new funding, philanthropic funding and state funding. It helped increase awareness and goodwill within the community about what the club is all about, beyond just the traditional families that were maybe associated with the GAA. And it also creates a great link between the clubs that are involved too, and a network. And so what does a Healthy Club do? They work with their communities to try and identify areas that they would like the clubs to support. And the themes that are most common are providing physical activity for non-playing members, the likes of the walking group that Rob mentioned, or maybe the football or hurling or recreational games for the lads who are have officially hung up the boots from competitive sport. Healthy eating, and that tends to focus in on the juvenile members. Mental health or emotional well-being, mental fitness, resilience, the topic that we're talking about here today. Gambling, drug and alcohol education. And then the last area is kind of a broad umbrella term called community development, and that's making our clubs make sure that we're reaching out to older members of the community that we're standing on the shoulders of, who have helped build the clubs, that we 1,600 clubs across the country today, and also making sure that our clubs are diverse and inclusive to maybe people with special needs or new Irish populations. And that's kind of what the Healthy Club is all about. And I'm fortunate I have a team of 4 in Croke Park that helps clubs on that journey and tries to support them in the areas they want to focus on. So in terms of today's topic around resilience, I'm looking forward to learning from this fantastic panel, because resilience is a personal thing, but it's also a collective thing. It's like two sides of the one coin. Coming from Leitrim, you have to grow up resilient. We grow rushes and whin bushes in great abundance, and we definitely had more beatings than victories, but I wouldn't change a thing for the 15 years that I played. Actually, I would. I'd love to have got a provincial title. We won one in '94, the first since 1927. I joined the senior panel in '95, unfortunately. Lost one in 2000 as well, but it's a bit of a cliche when we talk, when any player retires from their chosen sport, it is the connections and the memories that they take with them. The medals often become gatherings for dust, and the resilience that you build up along the way can transfer into all facets of your life. While playing with Leitrim, we had a couple of really great losses. We lost one of our centre-back, Shane McGettigan, in 1998. You might recall Shane was the son of Charlie McGettigan, Eurovision Song Contest winner. We played Galway in the Connacht Championship in Park Sean McDermott, and 2 weeks later he was over in Boston, and unfortunately in a building site accident lost his life at the age of 20 years old. And the way that the team, the county, the GA community rallied around both us as his friends and teammates, but also the McGettigan family, built an incredible resilience within everybody that went through that experience, both individually but also collectively. And unfortunately, we had a similar tragedy visit us as a squad in 2008 when Philly McGuinness, who was then wing forward with the Leitrim team, proud Mohill club man, was involved in a freak collision in a league match while playing my own club, Melvin Gales. Most innocuous bang of heads you've ever seen, and unfortunately Philly never regained consciousness and lost his life just 2 days later. And because we had gone through what we had with Shane, we knew that we could get through this experience as well. And that resilience is like that. It's something that you're continually building upon. Sometimes, some weeks you feel stronger, some weeks you don't feel quite so strong, but when you know that you have a network like the GAA or whatever your chosen sport is, or your community there to get you through it, that we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress, and it's a very real thing about how people react to adverse experiences, but post-traumatic growth is just as real a human condition and experience, and that comes from people finding the resilience in themselves and the collective resilience that a community can offer. So just to wrap up, I'm absolutely delighted again to have been asked here. Really, really looking forward to hearing what the panel has to contribute today, and I'll hand you back to Ger.
Thanks very much for that, Colin. I've never heard of post-traumatic growth, so we might get into that a little bit later on with our panel here this afternoon. I'm going to do quick introductions of our panel. Aoife Lane, apart from being a noted academic, is also a leader in the field of she's the leader of the women's GPA. So, I mean, when you think about the impact that women in sport can have and should be having in this country, and the distance that we still have to travel, it's because of people like Aoife raising the profile and fighting for the rights of women within GAA clubs, which you've seen a knock-on impact with the women's soccer team. And then you see the success that the Women's World Cup is having at the minute, and you realise that this is a win-win-win situation for everybody involved in sport to have more women involved. She's also obviously from a very important GAA family in Galway, so the next generation of GAA might not necessarily always be successful on the field. It's going to be something that we do in communities and really help to grow the sport as we go along. Jack, obviously, I think is probably familiar to everybody here as somebody who's played for Munster and Ireland, but more importantly, he's officially from Waterford, and so therefore is the first Waterford man, I think, to play professional rugby, which in and of itself is a huge achievement. We also have Gordon Power, is of course also a local man who made it as a jockey, but now is more famous, I suspect, as a jockey's coach, which is not something that, again, despite the fact that Ireland has produced some of the greatest horsemen that the world has ever seen, it's a teachable skill, and I think that's probably something that we're going to talk about a good bit today, about whether or not resilience is made, or if you're born with it, or if it's actually something like the rest of all of sport that we can actually learn from good quality teaching. And then obviously that takes us to our next guest, is again somebody who needs no introduction here, but apart from being a famous hurling coach, I think Derek has emerged as an important voice when it comes to teaching and the values that we need to bring to sport. It's easy just to talk about the tactical innovations that we've seen with his Waterford team down through the years, but especially since Derek is retired, he's been able to kind of open up a little bit about the importance of seeing the individual as part of the team and working with individuals to get the best out of them. And again, it's going to be important as we talk about this today. And then Brian's goalkeeping career has been involved at the top level of football. Hasn't quite just hit the Ireland cap just yet, but I'm not giving up hope on that, right? When you think about it, football is the most played sport on the planet, and I'm frequently amazed at how in Ireland we don't give enough credit to the people who make it. Every kid in Africa, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Australia gets out there, and one of the first things they ever do is have a little round ball and they kick it around. And to come from anywhere in Ireland and to make it all the way against the competition that these guys have to face is a phenomenal achievement. They're literally in the top 2 or 3% of footballers who've ever played football in the world, because they've made it all the way to the Premier League. So it's an incredible achievement, and I think that it's one that we don't fully value in Ireland, because we kind of got used to it with players in the 70s, 80s and 90s when that competition didn't exist. But these guys are making it today in a situation which requires an incredible amount of resilience. Derek, we talked a little bit about resilience yesterday on the radio when we were chatting about making it as a minor, and you mentioned something that I kind of wanted to tease out today. We need people to understand that you do have to be hard at certain times in your life. Life will be difficult, and you have to steel yourself against that. How do you do that?
It's very hard, I suppose. I think first and foremost, it has to be an awareness around it. We all are trying to strike the right balance between bringing people with you, being empathetic, being caring, if you like, but the reality is there comes a cut-off point in terms of when you have to say to a guy he's going to make it or he's not going to make it. Or so I think it's the imparting of the language and the process that you follow in that. You know, there might be someone here you can recognise as a brilliant administrator. I think it comes with the people that are involved. The person involved, the management involved have to have the skill set to be able to recognise a person's skill set, whether it's suitable to administration, whether it's suitable to, you know, an impact role as a sub, whether it's suitable to on the team, if you like, in terms of making them more resilient. I think it's understanding what resilience is. You know, you spoke already about, or Cullum spoke about having to come back from tragedies within their own panel. I think it's that type of resilience where it's almost like rebound resilience, where you're landed with something and you have no choice but to kind of come out fighting, as opposed to be kind of robustly resilient, where you have guys who are just born for the big occasion. They're just born for, you know, to tackle it head on. I always consider Kevin Moran, that plays with Waterford now, he loves the big day. You know, he just a personal insight, he just loves the big day. He would feel that the bigger the day, the more born to the manner he is in terms of performance. So to answer your question, I think it's just the imparting of the information, that you don't have a mollycoddling situation, but you have a situation where you're able to be firm but fair. I think that comes from parents. It's very simple. It comes from parents. Like, I was born and reared in the heart of Ballybeg in Waterford City, so I'm on the street since I'm 6. You know, I don't mean that with any disrespect to my parents. I mean, you're on the street since you're 6, but then you have to make the decisions based on what your parents' wishes are for you, not that they're trying to steer and guide you. And sometimes you see even parents come into in parent-teacher meetings and they're ambitious for their kids, but they're right to be ambitious for their kids. They're trying to steer and guide them in the right manner. I think they're giving, and I think if the parents, the boys can see or the girls can see them giving, I think that actually makes you more resilient. The more you give, the tougher you become, even though it sounds like a contradiction.
Yeah, no, Gordon, one of the things that always strikes me about racing is you lose and 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 you lose, and then you win and it's been a good day. And sometimes you don't even get that win. It's an incredible sport where you have to steel yourself against losing. It could be 70 races in a row before you have a winner. How do you get used to that?
Well, listen, racing is a unique sport. Like, when you start off, you're going in there into the jockey school. You have great ambitions. You're going to be the next. All that's in your head is you want to be champion jockey, and you just have to keep working really hard as an apprentice to build yourself up. The trainer gives you great confidence in yourself, in your own ability to go out and put loads of confidence in you in your race riding, and you just have to keep working hard in the game. Like, it's a very tricky sport to make it as a professional. Like, some great riders riding that don't get there, but some of the top guys are good, but it's just constant work. You know, you really have to work hard at it. Like, when I started as an apprentice, we got a bit of army training, as Derek was saying, to harden you up, and you're not afraid of a bit of work, and you just get stuck in, and you have to show that you want it, show that you need it, and you have to be mentally very strong for it. You know, there's no good a guy coming in like Jack looking to be a jockey, you know, sort of. They have to be realistic to tell him, you know, sort of.
Probably do.
He's got other skills. He's all right though. Tell me more about the army training. Did they have you doing like the proper commando type stuff?
No, when we got there, in the jockey school, we went in for a 10 months training course for horse riding, and we were based in the Army Equine School on the Curragh, and the Army guys were training us, and like, they didn't mess us about now. They were getting stuck in. They were training us nearly like commando half the time, you know. But they really put us through the mill now. But listen, it was brilliant training for me to grow up. Like, you're a 15-year-old guy going in there, you know, so you have no choice but to, once they're shouting and screaming at you, you have to take it. Like, you need to be mentally strong for it. But brilliant for any guy. I would recommend to any kid going in. Like, that army, that really stood to me. I'd always remember that. And they just keep you well focused on what you're doing.
And did everybody make it through, or did some people drop out at that point?
No, what happens is when we're going in, you're on two weeks trials, and the best 25 lads out of the two courses will get accepted, and then you go in for a 10 months training course in the racing apprentice school in Curra, and you do your training in the army as well. And it's not for every guy now. Like a lot of lads that drop out halfway, they just said no, it's not for me. But if you're willing to work and just keep your head down and focus, like the army guys will focus you, and brilliant. I loved it. I loved it. No.
All right, Aoife, talk to us a little about setting up the WGPA, will you? Because it was a huge moment for Irish sport when an organising body came together and said, hang on a second, all of the victories that the GPA have not filtered through to the women's side of the game. Did you face opposition, or was it actually the type of thing that Ireland was ready for at the point when you guys stepped forward?
Yeah, I think we were pushing an open door really, but yet wanted to do it our own way. Like I wouldn't have been. I've no pedigree as a player myself, but obviously I grew up in a house where you know I was looking at something that I was like, oh, it's fairly cool. You know, my dad played with Galway, and when I saw a girl playing with Galway, I was like, sweet God, I didn't know that existed. You know, until 1996 when Galway won the Camogie All-Ireland, I don't think I even knew it was possible. But for me then, thereafter, it didn't matter if it was a man or a woman in a county jersey, I was equally impressed. Like I'd be blown away meeting Cora Staunton. Like I'd love that. So it was very natural then to kind of fight for it when you realised, because I hadn't a clue, but when I started listening and when you heard what the girls were experiencing at a basic level, you were like, oh, it's common sense. And you were pushing an open door with them because they were like, this is ridiculous. A lot of the time the girls would just say, it's fine, we'll get on with it. Do you know, we're able for this. It almost made them more resilient that they were dealing with a fairly crap experience a lot of the time. It almost kind of fed into the siege mentality for them. But you actually had to push them and go, but it's not okay. And I heard Darren O'Sullivan, she's a Cork ladies footballer, on your show a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about expenses, and I was like, oh, thank you God. Like, you just need them to speak up, and you need them to have higher expectations for themselves, because it's not taken for granted amongst the female player.
So they don't get mileage. That was
Yeah.
that issue.
Yeah.
So she's one of the best players in the country,
Yeah.
and captain of the Cork team. In succession to her sister, so obviously like a steeped in GAA family, and they don't get mileage the way the GPA fought for and got mileage. But when you started this conversation, it was stuff like there were no hot showers.
Yeah.
So on a Tuesday night there'd be hot showers for the lads training. On the Wednesday night they wouldn't flick the switch to turn them on.
And it was really annoying because the headlines, like the day we launched, it was a bit of a, like, it was incredible. I think Colin was actually there. He would have been a good friend of mine and supported it. Like, and the GA were there, the Ladies Football Association were there, the Camogie Association were there. I think there was a collective awareness that this wasn't a bad thing. Because when you're part of a union, we're all part of unions at work and stuff, you're automatically seen as, oh, they're going to cause havoc and cause trouble, but we didn't want to come about it that way. But the headlines the next day were all about toilets and showers. I was like, oh my God, but that's what was picked up on. And that's just basic organisation skills. We shouldn't even be talking about that. It should have been about getting access to good coaches and good pitches and good facilities. But it's so complex. I mean, Colin knows this. There are 3 separate organisations. So, you know, there's a lot of barriers to overcome. And I think we rely on goodwill a lot, but we're kind of gone beyond the stage of goodwill, and we need to see good change. We get caught up in good news stories. And like I found out the other day, even Leitrim ladies football, I think they're getting 5 or 6 a training now. You know, that just kind of goes, oh, you know, there's still a long journey, you know, so you have to remain grounded on it too.
Yeah, and you need to channel your resilience at various steps
Yes.
along the way. Jack, you're local, right? This is, if you played Gaelic football, it would have been for Gaultier, is that right?
I played a bit underage, tried to anyway.
And when did you get good at rugby? What was that moment where you're like, hang on a second, I'm going to do this instead?
I suppose it wasn't until I probably moved to Limerick and I was kind of playing with the underage Munster teams, 18s, 19s, and then I suppose when I went to 20s then I got into the academy. And I suppose that's just when I had to kind of go, right, this is give it everything here now. And I did 3 years there. I went to the 2 Junior World Cups, and then after that I moved into the senior panel and kind of kicked on from there.
So was Gaelic football your first sport?
No, hurling.
Right, okay.
I would have played hurling with Ballygunner. That was probably the #1 sport, and that's kind of the way it was going. And I'd like to think that's maybe the way it might have gone if rugby didn't come in. But you know, I'm happy with the route I took, and
yeah, it's worked out.
Paid off.
And so I presume everybody here probably understands that Gaultier is made up of 2 separate hurling clubs as well as the football club. So one week you'd be knocking the shite out of your teammates and then passing the ball the next week.
Yeah, and then you'd be having to bump shoulders with them in school as well. So there was, you know, you're always they were kind of your friends as well. You know, although there were massive rivalries on the pitch between Ballygunner and Passage, but you come together then and you're playing for Gaultier and you're having a laugh and a joke about it, and then you're going out on the weekend and you're tearing lumps out of each other. So it was different, it was unique, but look, it's a brilliant club and the community around, everyone buys into it.
Good practice for playing Leinster then and then playing with them in Ireland.
Yeah, exactly.
This has nothing on the Ballygunner Passage rivalry. And what about your story, Brian? How much of a footballer, a Gaelic footballer, were you in your youth?
Hurling football would have been my first sports to turn to as a kid. Like, was Gaultier and Ballygunner, similar to Jack. You know, I loved hurling football. Soccer was 4th or 5th down the road. You know, when I was asked to go play a soccer match, if the hurling or football match to play, then it would have been them I would have chosen. Like, but I kind of stumbled across the soccer a little bit and never played in goal before or whatever. And goalkeeper didn't turn up one day, and I was forced to go in. I was bawling, crying, going in the goal, and somehow I did well, I had a knack for it, and you know, I played a little bit along the way growing up in soccer, but again it was Ballygunner and Gaultier, and they were the first ones, and you know, you'd probably have 2 or 3 games in a weekend, and it was probably hurling football at different age groups or whatever.
And so what age are you when you start taking soccer seriously? What was the spur for that?
Probably when I moved to England. Generally, like, I think I played, so I've probably played with some of the lads in the room here, senior football, championship game in Walsh Park, the week before I moved over to Man City as a kid, at 16 years old, like, and it only hit me then, like, well, this is it now, like, I won't play hurling football again, potentially again, like, and you know, I had no ambitions really to be a footballer in any shape or form. I just think it just happened for me. I was lucky in that sense, and I was offered a contract at 16 years old, and I took a chance, and 20 pre-seasons later, I'm still going, thankfully. So
I think the junior team would take you back, so just to make sure.
I watched the game last night, the boots in the car, and then I saw the Strapley full back, and I went, I'm not going out there. So Finnegan wouldn't let me alone. I was on honeymoon last week, and Finnegan was texting me every second day to come up. So you'd be moving too quick for me now. But no, look, I've been privileged to be in a career so long. So I'll try drag it out for another couple of years if I can.
So when you go to Man City at 16, did you feel like you were behind the other goalkeepers at that stage because you hadn't been steeped in football, but that you had other things maybe from playing GAA that gave you a slight advantage? What was that like?
To be honest, I felt a little bit out of my depth at the start. I'm a farmer's son, moved over to Manchester at 16 years old, and you know, you move into a big city. I was put in with a family on my own initially. Didn't know what was going on. I went in training, and basically the first week I wanted to go home. I wanted to book a flight. I told him I made a wrong decision, and I suppose like any kid, like, I was lucky in a way that when I went over to Man City, there was 9 or 10 other Irish lads there, mostly Dublin-based lads, who most of them went on to have a good career in that sense. But they kind of ease you in, and you kind of start hanging out with them, and you feel more comfortable in your environment, which I did, and I started enjoying the training. And I suppose one thing that's probably stood with me since I was a young lad is I always liked to prove a point and prove that I fitted into a certain place, and I did, and luckily enough I had goalkeeping coaches that liked me as a kid, and I managed to get a second contract and a third contract, and here we are 20 years later.
So it kind of feeds into the theme of the conversation. It is about resilience. So many 16-year-olds go and they find that overwhelming, because when you think about it, it's not the perfect environment to send a 16-year-old to. In retrospect, would you have preferred to go over a little bit later, or was that actually the right thing for you at that time? Like, the question always comes down to, is it the right thing to stay or go? And the League of Ireland is much better now than it even was 20 years ago. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, the only way you can ever tell if anybody's telling the truth, would you send your 16-year-old son to England now if that opportunity arose?
I probably wouldn't. The game has changed so much over the last, since I've been involved in it. I think you know, the Irish lads getting an opportunity now used to be going to Premier League clubs or going to Championship clubs, League or First Division clubs back then, but Championship clubs now. a lot of kids now are going to League Two or even conference teams to try find a career. I've a cousin of mine now, his young lad's 16 years old, and he's playing in the underage League of Ireland with Wexford at the minute, and he's desperate for a career. Like, so I'm trying to slow him down and let him develop. One as a footballer. Unfortunately, he's a goalkeeper as well, which I was trying to sway him away from. To be honest, he was an outfield player and he wanted to play in goal, but you're trying to slow him down and develop as a human as well and as a person, you know, and let him grow. And there's plenty of time, you know. There's plenty of time to go over, and I think the way the FAI is changing now, I think it's for the good for the younger lads coming through, and I think it will help the next generation be better prepared to go over to England. And I don't think there's a massive rush now. I probably hold off till at least you finish school, but then it's hard to say no to a contract. It's hard to any parent that has a kid going over and their young lad gets offered a contract. It's hard to turn it down, isn't it? So you might never get that chance again. So, but if it was my young lad going over now, I'd try hold him back a little bit, unless the right opportunity came up.
Yeah. Are we getting better at spotting that difficulty that sport has, Derek, where we want our minors and our under 20s to be really good, but we also don't want to expose them to the pressure of that as much anymore as we maybe had in the past, that it can be a bit too much too soon if you are a superstar and there's a lot of pressure on you in games which ultimately in the long run don't matter that much. Have we got better at that?
I think we have. I think we're definitely getting better. To the point I made in the first point, which is where we need to be careful that we still don't stand in the way of absolute freedom of choice or ambition. You know, I remember in my house, like I had extremely loving parents, and I don't want to paint the wrong picture, but I wasn't allowed to play soccer now. You know, I'm just being straight up. You know, and I don't think it did me any good in the long term. So I think the changes that are coming now are probably a reflection of society. You know, at 16 years of age, I'd have to come home and say what the priest said in the sermon at Mass. You know, I'd have to come home and say it back to Mum. She'd say to me, at Mass, I said, I was. Well, tell me what he said in the sermon, you know. And I'd have to kind of come back, listen, and just, as I said, I have the most lovable parents. And when I went to college, then I went half mad then because of the, you know, the kind of, not the regime now. Jeez, I'm painting an awful picture now. But, you know, but I think things have changed, you know. I'm very, I won't say liberal with my young lads now. I'm nearly telling them, you know, play all the sports, you know, make your choice yourself. But yet there's part of me, a kind of a selfish, subconscious kind of saying to me, I should be pushing them down the route of one sport, you know. So I think maybe that's a battle all parents face as much as coaches, you know. I think it's so I think we are getting better, but I still think we need to be mindful of allowing people to go for it as well. How
does that conversation with yourself go when you're like, you know, your subconscious is saying, is it hurling you want to push them to, or is it something
else? 100%.
I was like, is it golf? Just so how do you stop yourself from, and how does that, it's like...
Yeah, I don't know, see, look, well, even in the 5 years I was involved in Waterford, I paid no, I really didn't, I was blatant neglect on my behalf in terms of my parenting role, I suppose, in terms of sport. I just didn't do anything with them, you know. I was there in body only, I wasn't really there in mind, you know. So now you're trying to catch up for those 5 years, and all of a sudden you're trying to put them through a boot camp, you know, in terms of trying to get them up to the speed of it. But like, you know, how does the conversation go? It's guilt-laden conversation, you know. It's a guilt-laden conversation. My young fella finished first year now, 3 weeks ago. He stayed in my parents' house for the last 3 weeks. You know, I'd say he's trying to stay away from me, if I'm honest. You know, he's trying to stay. He's because he knows when I'm in there, I'm asking him, are you on that PlayStation? You know, and he might get a bit more. Ironically, now the parents that I've almost painted in Holocaustal kind of terms are the ones that are allowing him to do whatever he wants. You know, so I think, I don't know, does it work both ways? You are what your parents wanted you to be, I suppose. But the conversation is hoping that he gets to a 15 or 16 and actually says, geez, you know what, he makes a decision himself based on guidance and support, but not based on any absolute kind of forceful, you know, parenting or guidance.
He will be a better hurler at 15 or 16 for having played everything else though, right? Do you believe that, or do you think that 12, 13 you kind of need to be doing a bit more?
Yeah, well look, he might follow the opposite path that I followed, which is I was outstanding at 15, 16, 17, 18, and then it was kind of downhill after that, you know. So I don't know. He might go academic route. You just don't know. I think I'd be slow to kind of pigeonhole him in terms of anything. But I think the late developers, definitely that 14 to 19 development, it actually grows your love of the sport as well. I think if you get so much of it between 12 and 15, it can break you, like from a point of view of expectation, scrutiny. I went up to De La Salle, playing an under 15 challenge match yesterday evening, playing St Martin's of Wexford, and our best player with De La Salle, he was actually sent off because he gave one of our own players a dig. And I was just watching. I was trying to watch it from afar. My own young lad was playing. It wouldn't be great. He'd be just steady enough. But it just materialised on the pitch. The other guy who was a star player and a really, really good player, and one of the other lads was trying to encourage him. Hey, listen, stay at it, persevere. Really, really using good language. The other lad, and he meant to him, shut up, and he gave him a dig. And the referee rightly sent off his own player, our own player, for hitting his own player. So he went off to the line. And I was just saying, geez, there's a little project there now that's needed. But I'd say that's the case in lots of clubs. I'm not saying ill discipline is a part of Gaultier, but there's star players who need guidance, better support, and they might need tough love as well. I think I keep talking about caring for players, but they might need harsh logic as well, which is kind of, the old-fashioned approach that my parents would have given me, which is, you don't behave like that. You can't. That's not part of how you should behave. And I think that actually makes it tougher as well, indirectly.
Jack, have you had tough love at any point in your career? Have you had to be told?
Yeah, I've had a few now in training sessions and stuff like that. I think with the environment that we're in, kind of anyone who kind of comes in with an ego or kind of a prima donna, they're slowly brought down back to earth. I still remember one of the first training sessions I had up there. I was only 17 at the time. I was with the academy, and we were training, and we were the first bit of contact. And James Cronin, who I actually live with now, but we're doing a tackling drill, and he came around the corner and he just dropped all his weight down top of me and sat me flat on my back. And we laughed about it back in the day, but he was like, I was chatting to him, and he was like, I saw this young lad coming in, didn't know anything about him, and I just thought, I'm going to just teach him what Munster's about. And that was kind of how we learned. And kind of when I came through, I suppose I was coming through, Paulie was still playing, and people were afraid to speak in meetings or on the pitch, because you felt like he would do all the talking and stuff. But it's only kind of after, when you realise that when he's gone and there is that void. But because people were probably so afraid to stand up to him or to question him, that we saw a slow transition stage when we lost Donnacha O'Callaghan and Rog and all these kind of players, that there was that small void of where people kind of had to step up to the plate. And I suppose Pete I think it was only 24, 25 when he captained Munster, and that just kind of showed the type of leader that he was, to be able to be the club captain at such a young age, and to try and fill that void was certainly tough for him. But I think as a squad as a whole now, we've really grown, and I think going into the next few years that we have a nice core group of I suppose we call them the leadership group, and even when lads are away on international duty, that there's still a few lads who are stepping up to the plate and driving the standards both on and off the pitch.
So in retrospect, would it have been better for everybody to be, I'm not challenging Paul O'Connell because it's hard to do that, but to be taking him on a bit more, like if you could all wind the clock back to O'Connell's last 18 months, but everybody knows it's probably going to be his last 18 months. At that point, does somebody tap him on the shoulder and say, right, for the benefit of the group, you're going to have to stop shouting, stop managing the referees during the games and get everybody else to do it? Or do you have to say to everybody else, listen, you guys need to be taking him on, you need to be challenging him?
I think it kind of just comes naturally to some people. I don't think you can be telling Paulie to not say anything or not question the ref, because his leadership abilities were second to none. And I think it should have been more of a case where probably coaches should have identified potential leaders and maybe gone for a more mentoring role. So learn from Paulie, learn from what he does, and kind of be able to develop your own skills and your own abilities, as opposed to kind of not question him. But certainly there was that fear element, and I think that's certainly gone now. And I think people do have a more freedom of speech in meetings, and even with Johan coming in, he does like to be questioned, he does like to be challenged, and I think that's something that as a squad you do get better, and I suppose you come up with solutions quicker, and sometimes we come up with better game plans, and unfortunately then sometimes the game plans don't work, but I suppose you just take that in the chin and you kind of build for the following week.
Yeah, at least when the game plan doesn't work and you've all had an input into it, you're responsible for it not working, and you feel that it wasn't imposed on you, so it's a collective failure and then a collective triumph when you fix it.
Yeah, absolutely, and in fairness to Johan, kind of when it comes to media duties and stuff, he takes the rap, but you know, as a squad, we know we go in on a Monday morning after a poor performance, and we kind of look at ourselves before we point the fingers. I think anytime you're ever pointing a finger, there's one pointing at the person, but there's also 3 pointing back at you, and that's something that kind of that we take. You have to take responsibility for yourself before you go and start questioning other people.
Gordon, will you talk to us a bit about coaching jockeys? Because I made the point earlier on that Ireland's famous for having some of the best horse people in the world in terms of their ability to arrive at the right time. You know, you think of Johnny Murty, you think of Ruby Walsh. You're teaching that next generation of jockeys, and a lot of them, that generation would have gone completely instinctive. I learned this on the back. I learned this through the hard school of hard knocks. I fell off. I realised what I did, and nobody ever told me what to do. But that's not really true, is it? Everybody had a mentor along the way, and it seems like it's definitely, there's loads of bits of this that are teachable.
Oh, definitely. Like this is a new thing that's coming into Ireland here now. It's a jockey's pathway thing, and they have access to so much now compared to when we were coming along. Like you have physio now, fitness people, jockey coaches like myself. Like there's only 2 of us here in Ireland, and we were taught in the UK to come here to Ireland to teach the young lads, and listen, coaching is the way forward for them. Like a young lad will ring you and say, listen, I want to, can you help me through a race here? If there's an apprentice road and he'd done something bad, he could ring you up and say, listen, will you have a look at this race? I'd have a look at it. I'd ring him up and say, listen, we'll meet up, we'll have a discussion, see where things went wrong and where we could kind of move forward from it, and just teach him basically. Like it's not race riding. You have to teach them life skills a small bit as well. You know, like every young lad's coming in, they want to literally go to the top straight away, but it doesn't happen that way. They have to build themselves up, and
so it's not just mechanics. It's not just your whip is in the wrong hand or it's in the wrong place.
There is a bit of that as well. Like if you could say a lad come in and say, listen, my horse is leaning this way. I said, well, look where your stick is. Pull it through into the other hand. Maybe correct your horse. And it's just literally having a discussion about where to go better from, like, you know, as regards race tactics wise.
But the life skills, what is it?
Like basically, it's management. Like you're coming in, these lads are coming in at 16 years of age into the racing game, and if they get going at that age, like they're going to make a lot of money. You know what I mean, in the game, and it's trying to manage that. Like, go to the boys' heads or something, like they're 16, 17, and they have access to a lot of dough, you know, and they can go the wrong way a bit.
Well, the stories of various jockeys, you know, Johnny Murty speaks openly about it, and I think has done loads of sessions at race, but then there's loads of other ones who have ended up alcoholics or addicted to drugs or depressed, because it's such a weird sport where you have to starve yourself again and again and again, and then at the end of it you win 100 grand if everything goes well.
It's so mentally draining, you know, like guys come in there and like they're struggling big time with weight. If they're a bit of trouble with weight, like they're wasting hard, they're going to the sauna, they're running, like they're going days without grubbing. It's mentally not good for them, like, you know, and lucky enough, I was okay weight-wise, but there's a lot of lads who are a lot worse than I was, you know, and they're pushing themselves every day. Because if they can't make the weight, they're just forgotten about. The next lad is in their place, you know. It's ruthless.
Aoife, one of the things that I know the GPA certainly do is they try and put in place a bunch of courses for their players to go on. And I think the WGPA do exactly the same thing. You've got a bunch of scholarships, and you've got access to the John Madden scheme as well. How important is it that a player's body actually spends its time thinking about that aspect, the development of the human being, because it's not quite as extreme as the jockeys, but a lot of GAA players are putting their careers on hold for 3 or 4 years, chasing a dream that they might reach, and that's great, and even then sometimes they find that a bit unfulfilling because the rest of their life has been on hold the whole time.
I think you're blown away now about how much coaches and players need a different skill set. Like before, you just needed to go out and be very good at hurling, or be very good at coaching the game in terms of this lad suits this position, or you might mark, even if there was that amount of tactics. So straight away, when the needs change like that, you have to respond in terms of service provision and training. Like from a coaching perspective, Derek's style is what everyone wants now. You're moving away from the real dictator kind of approach. It doesn't really work, even in soccer, rugby, all of it's changing. So for me, and just to hark back a little to the healthy club, a massive part of that is developing healthy coaching. And how do we do that? Because it's not instinctive and it's not automatic in a lot of people in terms from a coaching perspective. And like you said, from a player's perspective, there's just a whole different experience for them now in terms of giving so much to the sport. And sometimes I wonder, they always give a lot to the sport. 20 years ago, I remember Derek playing in a minor All-Ireland against Galway. I don't know, do you remember the little yellow helmet? I think you were very young at the time. And Galway won, and you're these 17, 18-year-olds. I don't know how many of those Galway players even played senior. There was these great white hopes. And you're wondering what happened. And Galway had that for 20 years. We won enough minor All-Irelands to blow everyone away, but none of them came through. And often I wonder if it was the skills, the life skills bit around helping these kids through. So we do an awful lot of it I stepped down from the WGPA in January now, but we do an awful lot of work around personal development, professional development, career coaching. Fergal Hartley is a good Waterford guy there, and Roisin, they do a lot of work for us in terms of helping players, and they just get so much out of it. I did it myself. I did the Jim Madden programme. And it just gives you so much focus, and you're like, it's worrying in one way because you're like, we used to have that resilience naturally, and now we almost seem to need a little bit of help with it. But it's just the way the world is changing, I guess.
Why do you think that happened?
I guess just with times change, life was a lot more uncomplicated when I was 5 or 6. I didn't know anything but a pearl and a ball. I was obsessed. I didn't watch television. I don't have those conversations with my friends about what programs you liked. Whereas now kids do have a lot more pressures. We'll bandy it about, but the social media thing is a big deal. I can search my name after writing an article in the Examiner, and I don't get, I'm fairly anonymous. I'm sure Derek gets a lot more abuse, but I'll see one little, I'll see one little nasty comment, and I'll be like, oh, that's not very nice, and it'll get to me. But so I'm just imagining what these people who are at the coalface and much higher profile. So I think the world changes, and we can't be silly and think that the same ways work. I think we need to adapt and change through the healthy club model as well. And it's not just about off the pitch. I would really like to think that we embrace what can we do to help coaches deal with these situations better, and in our kids as well, because it's not natural in us all. I panic if a kid comes up to me crying over something. It's not my instinct. I'd be ringing my friend Mary Maloney, who's a healthy club officer, going, will you come and talk to this person? I don't know what to do. I'd be handing a tissue or something, So I think we do need to help each other out a little bit, and that's why what the Players' Unions tried to do.
Yeah, I think the Rugby Players' Union is fairly hardcore when it comes to making sure that everybody's doing stuff outside of the game as well, because your sport is brutal, and you've all worked with players whose careers have been cut short by injury. It happens every year, so somewhere in the back of your head you must be thinking about an alternative life to being a professional sportsman.
Yeah, I think we're kind of blessed to have the Rugby Players Ireland associated with us, and essentially they look after us with anything we need, or be it counselling, or you want to get back into education, because a lot of players come out of school, they get into the academy, they try a bit of college, they find the balance too hard, and then they drop to college, keep up the rugby, and then they're 28, 29, 30, come to the end of their career and they realise they've no degree and they've nothing behind them, and it's time for them to get back into kind of college. But a big thing that I suppose Munster have started to do as well is kind of a mentoring programme where they kind of put you out to local businesses and try to get you work experience without essentially doing a 9 to 5, but you might go in for half a day and just to see what it's like, to see, is it your cup of tea? Would you like to work in finance? Would you like to work in sales? And it's something that I haven't used yet, but it's certainly something I will look to use. But like I suppose we're blessed to have such a good organisation backing us, and then to be so well looked after that it all kind of comes second nature. We kind of sometimes, a lot of us take it for granted, and some of us don't even end up using it until we're out in the I suppose the real world, as we call it. And we have to try and find a job, and you're working a 9 to 5, and it's only speaking to ex-players who have retired, unfortunately had to retire young, like Johnny Holland, for example. He had to retire through injury, and he kind of went out there, went back to college, and now he's kind of setting up his own business in nutrition, and he's doing a lot of talks as well. And the big thing that he found was just the hours, and to trying to get the balance between, you know, not going off for a coffee for lunch because you want to meet the lads, but instead, you know, he has to go off and go studying or go prep for a talk that he's given in the evening time. And it's something that we have to probably look at, and something that we have to have in our back pocket before we leave the game.
Do you feel that if you were to spend time doing that right now, at the stage you're at in your career, that there would be something nagging in your head while you were studying, that actually you should be resting, or you should be hitting the weight room, or you should be doing something else?
No, I think for me personally anyway, I think when I studied and played, it was always good, because it gave me a chance to get away from the rugby. I think sometimes when you get too much and you're too caught up in the sport, that you end up overthinking, overanalyzing, and you know, your whole mood can drop, and you can just kind of be a bit down. You play a match on the Saturday, and you spend all day Sunday worrying about, did I play well? You know, what's the coach is going to say? And then you come in Monday, and they only look at the game for 2 minutes because it's on to the next one, and you're like, what was all that worrying about? Where kind of when I was studying last year, and I wasn't playing a whole lot, but I suppose it kind of gave me that time away from rugby, that time away, and you're kind of just, you're worrying about an assignment due instead of that you're doing on a Sunday, as opposed to worrying about stuff that happened already and there's nothing you can do about it. And you come in Monday and you kind of, you're not as anxious, or you know, you're not as nervous faced into the meeting, because you haven't spent the whole 36 hours just thinking about that.
Brian, what's that balance like for you? As a professional footballer, do you worry about what happens next, or are you happy enough that you're going to be able to stay in football? Do you have a plan for when eventually the football stops?
Similar to, like I said, the unions and stuff. Like, we have the PFA over in England, which are extremely good at what they do, and giving us advice. Like, they've been there since I first moved over to England, but I've only really utilised their services probably over the last 6 or 7 years, and I was more aware of what I wanted from them in terms of whether it was going down a course, whether it was advice on pensions or what to do next after football. As I said, I've been lucky now that I'm 36, I'm still able to play the game, I'm still able to move relatively well. So some days, like this week especially, you see some 20-year-olds run around and you're going, why am I doing this? But it's at the end of each session you kind of feel, that's why I'm doing it, because you get that nice release, and you get that drive going forward. And it's similar going on to after sport. Now, I want to play on as long as I can, because I say to some friends, and that, like I said, like, you have it on your doorstep, like you'll be long enough without the game. Go and enjoy it. If the lads playing junior last night or whatever, enjoy it, because you won't have team sport forever, unless you maybe step into the coach world or whatever. But I think, as Jack was saying, like you play a game and you might lose the game, whatever. Mentally, it's quite tough to go and think about doing something else, because I said you're preparing for a Monday morning session, you're preparing for a Tuesday session. But I think as over the years have gone by, I think I've developed a little bit better in my understanding of my own body, in terms of, like, right, today's a rest day, whereas sometimes you can try too hard and you're not getting any better, or you're getting worse at what you're doing. And it takes it into your personal life as well, like that. You don't focus on anything else. You don't want to focus on anything else. And I said it's only probably over the last 6 or 7 years that I understand myself better. I understand that if I have a bad game, or if I have a bad training session, it's only one training session. It's only one game. And there's more important things in life. And as I said, like, there's a long life after sport. And he said some lads unfortunately retire early. Some lads choose different paths. Some lads get released. I don't know how 17, 18-year-olds now do it and get released. You know, the percentage, I think it's 95% of young kids these days that get their first contract. Only 2% actually make a career out of that. 95% of them don't have a career. So I don't know what them young lads do. I still think in England, I think they're way behind in actually helping the kids find another career. Because when I was over there, I never got advice off a club as a young lad going into my late teens or into my early 20s in terms of like, well, if this doesn't work out for you, what's your plan? I never got one bit of advice, which they have improved on. We have regular meetings with the PFA. They come over probably every 4 or 5 weeks to us, and they have meetings with the academy players, under 23 players, and the senior players in our needs and what we need. Like, there's different lads doing courses, there's different lads doing all sorts of different things through the PFA, and it is a massive help. And I always encourage lads now to utilise them and encourage them to go speak to, you know, whether it's to do with mental health, whether it's to do with your own development as a person. I think it's important that you seek that help.
Would you be interested in becoming a coach?
Yes and no. I suppose I see it's a tough graft. I see lads going out 7 nights a week, training young kids for pure enjoyment, and full credit to them. You know, and they go and they have their own work as well, like, you know, 8 to 5 or whatever jobs they do. But I enjoy that side of it. I definitely enjoy coaching. It just depends where I want to live, really, where I want to settle down. I reckon it'll probably be back in Waterford one day. So I might be back playing junior or something just at some stage. So hang on for a few more years. But it all depends where I want to be. I think England, if you want to be a coach as a footballer in the footballing world, I think probably your UK is your role, and especially being a goalkeeper. I think we still don't get the credit we deserve, in my opinion, as coaches. We have a goalkeeping coach, a card up there at the moment, and I think the manager barely says hello to him at times, to be honest with you, and we're just used as someone to stand in goal. Sometimes we feel, even though I know the games come on so much, but you're just expected to turn up and be good every day, and it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. We're talking about resilience. Obviously, Cardiff City had to show incredible resilience this year. You did a very public tragedy that lasted. It was such a horrible thing to happen, and it lasted so long as well. There was so much uncertainty around it. What was the atmosphere like around the club at that period, and how did the club actually get through it?
I think the club is still trying to get through it, to be honest, because it's ongoing. The case is still going, and but like we knew the deal was happening for a few weeks. The manager had met him, the board of them, they'd agreed a deal, and we were just delighted a striker was coming in to try help us. You know, we didn't have one that scored 2 or 3 goals the whole season. Our top scorer was 5 goals, I think. And to finish where we finished, I think, is credit to the group in itself. But, you know, the morning he was meant to arrive in for training, we have a WhatsApp group with the team, and I think the first text went in around 6:30 in the morning. Someone had got wind that something happened to the airplane. And like the few texts going, yeah, you're joking, like this is not happening, like. And as the morning unfolded, it was breaking stories in the news, and it was going out everywhere, and it was becoming more real. And we literally got a text from the player liaison officer, basically just to stay away from training. Said obviously the plane has gone missing, and we'll update you when we have more news. And obviously, when you hear a plane goes missing over the ocean, like, you know, there's going to be tragic circumstances, unfortunately, one way or the other. And you know, it was a tough few days, like, because as much as the players, we'd never met Salah ourselves. Hit everyone in the club. It was a strange kind of feeling throughout the group in terms of like, how do we approach this, and how do we deal with it. And we, you know, it took us a couple of days in terms of to have probably our first meeting with the manager, and he was like, look, it is what it is. We've a game next week. You know, we're trying to see if we can get it postponed. We were offered counselling if anyone wanted it. I believe I didn't take it personally, but I believe a couple of the lads took it. I think we had an away game a few weeks later that we were flying to. They cancelled the flight, so we got the bus instead. I think it was like a 6-hour bus journey or something we took instead, rather than an hour flight, which at that level you get looked after well in your travel, and some lads didn't feel comfortable. And even the ongoing, I suppose, for other players, I suppose we had another flight a few weeks later, and most of us got on the flight, bar 2 or 3 players. They took the bus instead because they didn't feel comfortable getting the plane. But it's funny, like we regrouped as a group, and we went on a really good run for a few weeks at that stage. And whether it was because of what happened or whether everything just came together for us as a group and we made us more determined. But it was tough. Like we were desperate for someone to come in to help us, and tragically it was took away. And it just proved to everyone, like, look, it's only a game at the end of the day. Your life is more important, your health is more important. So if you have that, like, you can do whatever you want.
Did you have to talk about it in groups as well to be able to tease out exactly what was happening, or were people reluctant to talk about it? Because it's such a weird thing to happen. As you say, you hadn't actually met this guy yet, and yet obviously there was a lot of excitement about his arrival. And then the fact that it all happens on TV, you can't ignore it. But does the group deal with it collectively? Do you have to kind of have a session where everybody sits down and says, this is going to have an impact, it might impact people differently? I hadn't even thought about the fact that people might not get on planes again. So, it is going to have a lasting legacy. Do the leadership group kind of have to have chats with people and take them aside and say, well, let's just listen to what people are saying?
Yeah, in terms of, we wouldn't call it a leadership group, it's kind of a senior group in terms of the team, like be myself, club captain, vice captain, and 2 or 3 other senior players that have kind of speak well with the manager and feed off how he wants to approach things at times. But then you have younger lads in the group who will say nothing, and you don't know whether they're okay or whether they're not. And it's just the way football is gone now. Like, I think, like, to shout and scream at younger players now, it doesn't happen. There's a different approach to the game now. I think when I first started to now, like, it's night and day. It's a completely different environment. I generally think some of the lads didn't know what the hell was going on. I think they're so obsessed with their cars and their watches and their nice clothes that a couple only look at them and go, I don't think they know today's Monday or today's Tuesday or whatever, and that's no disrespect to them, but it's just the way society is going. At that level, and whereas other lads would have found it difficult to deal with and to speak about and stuff, because in the same week we'd one of the lads as well that lost his dad to cancer, which was tough on him, and I think it was 2 days after his dad died, so everyone felt more pain for him, I suppose, in that sense, because we were all friends with him, and we were, and it was kind of hit us all in one go, like, which was difficult, like, but we came through it as you do. Time moves on. Ultimately we got relegated, and people still say when he missed out by staying up by 2 points. I think that's credit to the group, because I think to get promoted in the first place, I think we finished 14th or 15th the season before, and I think we got 35 or 40 extra points the next season with pretty much the same group, and then to actually give ourselves a chance to stay up, I think is. Now, for me, it's probably the best group of people I've been involved in terms of a team environment. Like, I think I've been in some good ones and some bad ones, but I think it's the resilience of that group itself to take it down to the last day or the second last day of the season, which it was, to give ourselves a chance. Ultimately we failed in the end, but that's what it is. Do
you think resilience can be taught, or do you think you have to go through adversity as a group and deal with that to come out the other side?
I think it can be taught a little bit. I think it's within each person. I think everyone in our life, we've all dealt with good, bad, and all sorts of tragedies through friends and family or whatever, and everyone takes a little bit from each failure or each bad thing that happens in your life. I think one thing I've always noticed, I think it's an Irish thing, especially living away. Like, it's very much an Irish thing that you always want to do well, whether it's a training session, whether it's being on time, and there's very few Irish lads I've actually come across that don't want to prove a point, or don't want to show that I'm better than you, even if someone thinks you have more ability or you cost more money or whatever like that. Like, Irish lads always train the hardest, in my opinion. There's so many different nationalities in football now that some lads kind of just turn up and go through the motions, and you're going like training would start at 9 o'clock. They'd kind of go in and do the gym session, and they'd be off the pitch by 12:30, and they'd be gone. And you're thinking, you're going home to sit on the couch, and you know that's what they're going to do, and they're not doing nothing else. But I just think the Irish mentality is and it's the same, like you see it in all sorts of sports at home here, that you always want to go the extra step. You don't want to let your family down, don't want to let your community down, and that's stayed with me. That when I play a game, the only people I'm thinking of letting down is one, obviously outside your teammates, is your own family, that they'll all think I've had a bad game today or whatever, and that kind of drives you on to improve.
So it's a fairly consistent thing the whole way there. Those you're playing for your own audience, whatever the level it is, be it a training session or a Premier League game. It's all the same.
Yeah, the one thing I always envy with club teams here and sport within Ireland is whether it's your county team, your club team, you are playing for the jersey. Whereas what I find over in England in contract sport, you're there till your contract's up, and you're only a number at the end of the day. You're a number in club, because at the end of the day your legs go, you're not performing for your manager, as Derek will know, that you'll be moved on, and that's just the way it is. It doesn't matter what you've done previously or how well you've done the past. When your time's up, your time's up. But it's just about staying at it, and if you enjoy what you do, I think it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And when your time's up, unless you played junior football for the lads last night. You'll definitely have a couple of years back here then, in your mid to late 40s playing juniors, it sounds like.
Maybe. Still have ambitions to play senior, so whoever Martin is, if you're still doing the job, I'll be back. I know you're short a few players next week. The lads have gone off to America and that, but no, but you love, everyone does it for the love of the game initially, and I'd always think myself, I'll go back and play hurling and football now. Hurling's a different game. I'd probably manage to play football, but if you're doing what you love, it's half the battle. It's when you stop loving it and you're forcing it, then I think it's time to maybe look at a different path.
Yeah, fair enough. Gordon, we've been talking about careers cut short by injury. That happened to you, am I right?
Yeah, it did. In 2002, September 2002, at the Listowel Racing Festival, a horse jumped through the rail in front of me, and the rail came out and hit me in the left eye, and it's blinded me in that eye now. So unfortunately, then I wouldn't have passed the medical to get my riding license back again. So I had to kind of just retire from it then. But it was a time when I was going really well. I was sort of in the line to be champion apprentice that year, which was a big deal, especially in the racing. I was really getting going, and it just couldn't have happened at a worse time. And I just had to, on doctor's advice and medical advice, I had no choice but to give up. But it's a unique sport. I can do everything else now with the racing, apart from put a set of colours on myself. I can literally do the job perfectly, but I just wouldn't pass a medical.
That must be heartbreaking at that stage of your life.
Oh, it was, yeah, definitely. Especially when, I was 23 or 4 at the time, and when it happened, and I was really going, I was on a buzz, the height going well, it's up, everyone was using me, I'm getting loads of rides, and trainers were really on a high at the time, and when it happened to me, it hit me very hard, and I didn't know whether it was coming or going, or what to do, but not like nowadays, you have everyone there to advise you, you have people talking to you and stuff like that. There was no one. I'd say one person came to talk to me in the hospital, that sort of way, and I was in limbo. I didn't know what to be doing, and I kind of just had to think, what am I going to do next, sort of way, and it did hit me hard at the time.
So what happened?
What do you mean?
Well, how did you go from there to being somebody now who's coaching jockeys?
Listen, I was tough. I was tough, mentally tough, and I could deal with the whole thing myself. You know what I mean? I knew it was bad. I knew it was badly injured, and things weren't good. Listening to the doctors, and I said, right. So I kind of had to get into my own head that I'm not going to get back. But I always thought later on maybe I would get the sight back, and I am going to get back. I am going to get back, but I just didn't. And I work for Jim Bulger at the moment, and at that time I was after getting a job as second jockey to him, and that was my first season there, and it was finished straight away. So he brought me aside when I came after I recovered from my injury, and we had a chat, and I kind of ride main work rider in his yard at the moment now. I've ridden some superstars for him over the years, and I work for part of him, and also I do my coaching as well, which I'm trying to I've started that 3 years ago, and I'm building that a nice profile of riders coming along at that at the moment, and really enjoying that part of it. At least I have something to give back that I couldn't, back into racing, and I can give the advice that I had through the riding to some of the young lads coming along. And it's just not necessarily the young lads; it's the professional main lads that are coming as well, looking for some advice and a bit of help with a couple of things as well, and. It was tough at the time to kind of, when you see all the lads riding away winners and you're sitting back and you can't do it, just, jeez, like this is killing me now. But after it took me about a year and a half to kind of really just get it out of my head and just focus on other things, and just listen. It's just life in general. You just have to deal with it and get on with it.
Yeah, racing is definitely the toughest sport. There's an ambulance following you every time you're at work.
Well, that's two of them.
Two of them, yeah. Jack, you had a fairly serious knee injury. The pre-season last year, was that when it happened? Was it just the start of the season?
So it was last game of last 2 seasons ago, so in the semi-final, and I got surgery then in the off season essentially, and it took me 10 months. So it was my first major injury, my first major surgery, and it was something new, a new challenge for me. And I think, I suppose that was the first time I'd had a setback. My career had been going really well. From when I broke on with Munster to the moment of injury, it was on a nice incline. And I suppose then you get a knock backwards, and you start thinking about your career, and you think about your place being taken, and you see new lads coming in, and I suppose there's just stuff you just can't do. You don't know what to do, but it's out of your control. And I suppose one thing that I did was I just kept myself busy. I went back to college, studied a master's, and I suppose having a good group of people and friends around you was massive. I think the group of friends that I have up there, they never leave you out of the loop, and even though at times you don't feel part of the squad, when the lads win on the weekend in a big match and you're sitting in the stand watching it, and you get excited, but at the same time, like, all you want to do is to be out there yourself, and you just sometimes you're standing back and you don't really feel part of the victory and stuff. But it's kind of the lads then after the match on a Sunday, you meet up and you have chats, and you have the bit of crack again, and you feel normal. But it was something. It was difficult at the time, but look, I came through it, and I suppose I've been through worse. I think looking back with Munster, I suppose the passing of Axel, and having to bury him on a Friday and playing a Saturday, regardless of what's thrown at us as a group, as individuals, I think we've overcome nearly the worst, and anything that comes, after that you kind of just take it in your stride, and you get on with it.
Was that something that everybody had to talk and tease out as well, or was that actually kind of, because it was again such a public thing, it was inevitable that everybody would talk about it? And Irish funerals are kind of like that, where you share memories and you share stories, and for all the difficulties that we have as a society, one of the best things we do is our funerals.
Yeah, and it was actually quite a unique experience where, like, all past players and present players, we got together and we spoke about great fond memories and funny stories that we had of them, and it made dealing with that circumstances that bit easier. But also then it kind of created a great community among present and past players that now when we meet each other, let's say it might be after a game or it might be on the street, that you acknowledge him. You might have known him personally, but we do now, and I suppose it's that kind of create a stronger bond between us. But I think after that Glasgow game, I think it was Pete spoke about after the game, and he just basically said, regardless of what happens going forward in the season, be it we lose a semi-final, we lose a final, it's not the be all and end all. There is bigger things and there's more important things in life, and I suppose it certainly it stuck by us. And unfortunately, look, we haven't been able to get past that kind of semi-final stage yet, but I think when it comes, look, I think the group of players that we have there at the moment, it'll be something special.
Because you talked about there about the bond between the former players and the current players. It's awful that it took the tragedy of Anthony Foley's passing for that to happen, but there had been a big separation between that group of players and your team for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the success that the previous players had, 06 and 08, and a frustrating part for us is that we always get compared to them and about how well they did and how successful they were, but it's a completely different generation, it's a completely new team, and it's a bit unfair, and the game's evolved. But I think when we kind of came together as a group, like, there wasn't, we talked about stories and experiences that they had. Like, people forget that they lost semi-finals and finals for 10 years leading up to that, and that's something that, look, I don't want to say that we're experiencing at the moment, but unfortunately, look, we haven't been able to win a bit of silverware in a while, and I think it's something that as a team you have to go through, those losses in order to gain that success. Like the jockeys, they might have 70 odd losses to get one big win, and that's something that we have to be able to overcome, and you have to be able to deal with. And kind of you might have an incredible successful season, but at the end of the day you get knocked out in a semi-final or a final, and it puts a whole damper on the whole season, and all you think about is that for the 6 weeks that you're off, and then you come back in pre-season and it's completely forgotten about, and you're already looking forward to the new season to start, just to put that behind you.
You're healthy now, obviously, fit and healthy and going well.
Yeah, fit and healthy. Started pre-season there on Monday, so looking forward to the season ahead.
All right, we'll open it up to questions from the floor now. If anybody wants to stick their hand up and ask some questions for us. I see a man scratching his head there. No question. We have a mic if anybody doesn't want to shout. They're all very shy. Yeah.
I'd just like to ask Eric, just in GA world, do you think it's gone like through the roof? Like, it's just, is there too much pressure now on GA players? Like, they're in this, as you call it, bubble. Like, they don't seem to have the social life that maybe a rugby player or a soccer player have. They're in a confined environment. Like, do you think that's unhealthy for the lads, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like the language around the whole area of resilience, I think is changing. I think there's if you refer to the lack of dictatorial kind of approaches, I suppose. I think people can be coercive, but they can also be affiliative, and I think that's what's happening. So, to answer your question, even if you look at Limerick last year, there was many stories came out in the Limerick camp that, after each of the Munster Championship games, they're having a couple of beers after each of the games. Now, it's probably easy to have a couple of beers on the back of a win, and you're going out the next week. It's different, I suppose, when you have a bad setback, if you like. And the one thing I will say about setbacks in general, and answering your question, is the first thing with any setback, I think, is you have to feel it. I think we have to teach people to be able to feel it. It's natural to grieve, if you like. If we're in Waterford, we have moments since 1959. If we have a major setback, like say the hammerings we got in Munster finals in 2016 and 15, you have to feel it first, because you're in your own county, you're part of a bubble, as you said, and then you have to follow a process where you come into the light, if you like, on the back of feeling it first. So I think there's more of an awareness around the fact that people do feel it, first and foremost. Where is it going? I honestly think that perhaps the whole picture of managers as being all conquering and all kind of demanding, I think it's actually a false enough picture that's painted, because I know during my 5 years at Waterford, we didn't really have a kind of a drinking ban, if you like. Not that we promoted drink or anything, but we just tried to, I suppose, integrate a culture whereby fellas would make their decisions for themselves. In terms of where it's going, in terms of preparation, I don't know where it'll stop. You know, again, I'm guilty of it myself. 3 years in a row we trained Christmas Day, Christmas morning, we trained Christmas Day between 10 and 1, and for 3 years in a row people say the absolute madness, why did we do it? Combination of trying to get an edge and the fact that some of the boys were going to Leopardstown or wherever on the next day in 26th, so it kind of frees them up. And I hate to be as chauvinistic about it, they always say we'll be doing nothing in the house between 10 and 1 anyway until the dinner is ready. The lads will be saying, God forgive me for saying it, but so we might as well train Christmas Day. But sometimes, you know, so I can't stand up here or sit up here and be completely hypocritical. I would have pushed out the boundaries in terms of that bubble. So there's a selfishness to it as well. So where it stops in terms of preparation, I'm not sure. I don't think it will stop. I think everyone will look for an edge year after year until there's intervention perhaps from GA in terms of an eventual kind of capping of it, and how to control that is very difficult. But I do think the balance between managing their lives like Jack is talking about there and having the crack I think that's evening itself out. And I think perspective is great. I don't think there's a GA club or an organisation that hasn't been through a tragedy. And even if I look at one of your own club members, I would consider Philip Manny to be one of the most toughest mentally in terms of any guy I've ever dealt with. And a great friend of his, Gary Murphy, obviously passed away a number of years ago. And I think it gives fellas great perspective. You know, I think selfishly for a coach, they're actually freer than when they go out on the pitch, because they're kind of saying to themselves, there's almost more important things in life, even though there's not more important things on that particular given day. They kind of, in the run up to the game in terms of preparation, they're able to kind of free themselves up. And I think that's evident in the world of inter-county hurling and football now. You know, you take everything's on the line at the weekend for Galway and Mayo. For, you know, one of them will go out this evening, and there'll be complete over-analysis of what will happen in Galway or Mayo tonight, we'll say, on the back of an underperformance, and then they'll question the cocoon of it. But the reality is, I think most inter-county setups are trying to do the same thing, but it's just they're probably highlighting one more than the other. So preparation, I don't think it'll stop, but I do think we're coming around to make it a more fun environment. Otherwise the boys won't get involved, they'll go travelling as they have been doing.
But that's it, isn't it? It's still a volunteer thing. You still want to play for Waterford. You still want to play. Like, some of your players walk away, they take a year off, they come back, and that's ultimately what's driving the arms race to be the most conditioned, the most well trained, the most tactically thought out team, because there's a standard that gets set by the Dubs in football and whoever, Kilkenny as it was in hurling. Like, so you listen now to the Kilkenny lads that they've all retired, and they talk about the obsessive level of detail that went into their nutrition, their training, and everybody else is inspired by that. So if you weren't asking that team to train, they'd be like, you're not working hard enough for us. This is it is a team decision ultimately. It has to be, right?
Yeah, which is questions the sustainability of it. You know, it's probably why I stepped away after 5 years. It's not a test every night, because I wouldn't consider it a test, but it's you almost have to be ahead of the lads in terms of what's the next curveball, the next thing you can come with, the next level of detail, and then it's the handing over of it. Then, like Jack talked about Paul O'Connell's influence, the handing over of it to the players, whereby they have an input into it without losing control as well. So it's a fine balancing act there between being on charge and then, you know, leaving them run the show, if you like. So I don't know where it's going to end.
But Brian, I presume with you guys, if a coach comes in and is phoning it in and doing the same stuff again and again and again, training gets boring, performances reflect that, the club begins to get a stink around it, and the best players leave and they're replaced by players who aren't as good as they were previously.
Yeah, I think topping up what Derek was saying there is, like, he has to control what 30, 35 players in a panel and or in a squad, and figure out what's the best route to take. And every manager in their own right will have a plan for the season ahead and the way to do it. I think the drinking bans and all that happens at club level. Happens. I know a junior team in Kilkenny that had a drinking ban for 6 months, and they played 2 games in that period. Like, I think, and they're giving out to lads whether in the pub on a Sunday evening having a pint or whatever, and it's junior hurling, like, you know, and you're wondering where the game is going, because they see these lads at the highest level play in a certain way or train in a certain way, that we have to do that to get the best. It's not like it's every team and every coach has a different approach. They'll feed off little bits of information of different guys, and that I've had some good coaches, some bad coaches on paper who you think would be better, and ultimately they kind of let you down when you see what they actually do, and then other ones have overachieved as well. I think my current manager, Warnock, I think man management style is incredible. Like I always remember, like he would always like encourage us to go for a drink as a group, because I think it especially with our environment, is we have lads from all over the world playing together that are not from the same community or not from the same city or town, and they don't. It's a good way of getting to know each other. And if you have a good group, it can work quite well. If you have a bad group, it can go the other way at certain times, which I've seen. But I always remember, like a management style, just my own personal. I remember when I signed initially for Cardiff as a number 2, and the manager that signed me got the sack after 15 games. I think they're second bottom on the table, and Neil came in and took over the group, and we still struggled for a few weeks. I still wasn't playing, and he said to me, like, "You're training well, I'm thinking of playing you the weekend." And then I was like, "Grand, okay." And then he pulled me in 2 days later and said, "I'm going to play you." He said, "Look," he said, "you were signed as cover. The Cardiff fans think you're," he said another word, but he said, "they probably think you're useless anyway and wonder why I'm playing you." And you know, he said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "If you play crap," there's any kids in there, is there? "If you're shit, you're shit." And that was basically it. Like, and he said, "Go out, enjoy it, and do your role." And it was a weird meeting, because he was basically telling me that I felt like he was telling me I'm useless. But I went out like, well, as I was 10 foot tall, like, and I was like going, and I went out, and funny enough, I played 7 or 8 games in a row there, and the first 3 games I got man of the match in the 3 games, like, and I don't know whether that was just by chance or by luck or whatever. Like, the team hadn't won in 10 or 12 games before that, and we went on an unbeaten run for them 8 or 9 games, like, and it was probably just timing for me and a little bit of luck. But you know, it's just funny how he manages players, and you know, Derek would have been the same probably with his own group of players, and you know, everyone's different. Some lads need the arm around the shoulder, some lads need to be told they need to do extra training, or given a bit of tough love or whatever. But I just remember that story for me. It kind of came out, and I went in with less pressure on me to go in the game on the weekend, like, and I performed because of it, I think.
Yeah, so different skill set for the manager, and maybe you need a little bit of both. Certain people need a little bit of both, the kicking the arm around the shoulder and the kick in the ass at the same time. Another question here, yeah?
Yeah, I've got a 14-year-old son, and I guess there's 2 messages. You know, he loves his sport, rugby and soccer in particular. One message is you can concentrate and you apply yourself, you can get anywhere you want. The other one is it doesn't matter if you don't get there, right? And they kind of fight against each other, those 2 ideas. You want to kind of prepare him for the fact that he might not make it, and you also want him to realise that if he puts it all in, he can get there. So how do you kind of reconcile those 2? You know what? Question to anyone there.
I think there's an element of very long-term thinking in that. Like, I think you bring it back to, you're going training today and you enjoy that, and it's like kids as well, they like getting good at things so that they develop confidence slowly. So you take it away from the all or nothing, you'll make it or you won't, and you make it about, you know, you're going to enjoy the next session and what you're going to get out of it. And I mean, that's all what it is now with players. It's short-term goals and targets, and without getting crazy, having a psychology coach with the kid or anything, I think it's just stepping back from that kind of, like, I suppose, very dramatic alternative outcomes, and just making it about the process. Like, it's about the process for athletes, it's about the process for coaches, it's about the process for all of us, rather than making it into the extreme. I think that would be one thing anyway.
Do you not find that they kind of need to be obsessive almost about it too?
Well, no, I think they need to be balanced, and I think that's the thing now. Kids are like Derek's on about his kid, but for me that's a good thing. You know, you shouldn't really be specialising in a sport till you're 16 or 17 anyway. So yeah, you're delighted they're going down playing sport. It's good for them. We're all resilient because we're involved in sport. But it also would be cool enough if they're going off with their kids to a concert, or friends to a concert and that. So obsessive as a 14-year-old, I'd probably be looking at, that would probably, you know, that might give me alarm bells rather than anything else. I mean, you see Fela, and it's amazing, it's brilliant, but some people might challenge Fela as being, you know, coincidentally linked to the point where a lot of kids stop playing team sport because they don't make it. Or no, you know, it gets too competitive. So I'd be very much, like, I'm very much into the high-end, the elite, but very much about participation as well, and keeping the kid involved and finding a role for them in it. But part of that is being good at it. It's getting better at the skills, it's getting fitter, it's getting stronger. So those things as part of the process.
It depends on what you want, though, right?
Yeah.
Are you living vicariously through your child, or do you want them to be part of a healthy, happy club environment in 20 years' time?
That's your first intervention, so for Gaultier to look at obsessive parents.
A couple of questions at the back. Got the one at the door under the bar sign, yeah.
Just to expand on that a little bit, I'm familiar with rugby and I'm familiar with GAA, coach and both. There's transition periods, there's different times. So rugby has ladies rugby up into under 12, then you go into youth rugby, then you go into adult rugby. GAA is similarly, if you're Chico games, city leagues up to under 12, then you go into underage championship, and then you go into adults again. And back to the kind of resilience, and these kids who are playing multiple sports, and playing soccer, playing their rugby, well, that's all good. But it changes each time. So your go games is all about, and maybe it's all about participation. There's no results really. There's no, everybody gets to go on, roll off, and everybody gets their time. Then you just, it's a subtle change. But next year in championship, in Ireland you can only use 5 subs now. So you only have 20 kids who can play. Ballygunner up to 13. We're reaching that this year. We have 45 kids. We're lucky to enter 2 teams. But a lot of clubs have refereed as well, and look at these clubs that they're right with 15, just to make up the team, they don't feel going in. And it's a lot of this is, and back to your man's point first, it starts to get a little bit more difficult at that age because you have to be kind of now in the top percentage to get your game and stuff like that. So if you're good at 2 of the sports and you're not as good at the other sport, what I'm seeing is then they can kind of walk back from that one because they still get their game of those who can focus on that. And then the next thing they get a little bit older and maybe it's getting a little bit harder to get on that team, the next sport. And the specialising is nearly happening by accident rather than by purpose. And how do you encourage those and how do you encourage those kids who are on that borderline to stick with it and to keep going? Because again, as Derek said, there's some kids out there, a little bit like Derek, I was 5'9" and 14, it was great, I'm still 5'9" and 48 now. you fall backwards along the squads as you get older and you don't get senior games. Where you see these other kids, I played with Peter Quiggy, he was 5'6" at 17, and now he got to 6'2" and he's an inter-county hurler at the end of it. So how do you keep those encouraging and keep that part of it? Because life is all about resilience. It's not always about the elite sports and tragedies either. It's just these subtle changes in life, and kids find that it gets more difficult, and therefore just, not as good as that one, so it's just right.
But I was going to say, did our parents worry about that? I mean, we're all here, most of us didn't make it as elite sports stars. I wanted to be moving up to senior level, I now do triathlon. I'm quite happy with that. Do you know what I mean? Did our parents worry about, my child isn't going to make it?
For example, maybe about continuing participation and continuing to play all of those sports.
It doesn't have to be elite.
It doesn't have to be elite by any manner of means, but they're still.
But I think, like, say, I went into triathlon instead. Do you know what I mean? That's what I get my blood out of now. And I think, yes, you're creating sports people who are enjoying sports, but you would find your niche. I think sometimes we're worrying too much about children, and I'm coming from a primary school teacher.
I think some people will drop out of sport. It's not for everyone, and you will see with individual sports, like God, we're all probably team sport people here, GA people. We have to accept that there will be a drop off. Whereas with individual sport, it kind of maintains over your lifespan. So I think there's a degree of exceptions that you will lose some, but I also agree that we probably lose too many. But it's again, if you bring it back, the research is that kids need to show that they feel that they're getting better. Like a lot of people won't play hurling. Like we have a big problem with camogie in this country, massive, because girls are dropping out and they're not playing it because they're not given it the time, because it takes an awful lot of time to be good at hurling. So there's an awful lot of work to do on kids feeling confident and getting stronger and fitter and stuff, and that might help.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the Cork model, even it take a young lad of 13, his first inter-county experience in hurling will probably be Tony Forrestal. I don't think Cork have entered that this year for the first time. So inclusivity is obviously centred around the Cork model. So they're afraid that people will slip through the net. So they've regionalised their county because they have the numbers, I suppose. So therefore they are hoping that because of I won't say a non-competitive environment, that they won't be down in Waterford in the Tony Forrestal. They'll now have a situation where there's a likelihood that no one will slip through the net between that 14 and 18 period. The other thing, and this is not contradicting the early point I made, there comes a time where obsession is okay too. I think, you know what I mean? It's the sustainability of being obsessive is questionable. But there comes a time, I'm not talking about that period 13, a young fella 14 shouldn't be obsessive about something. But there comes a time where there needs a realisation that you can be obsessive about something to the point where it absolutely drives you to where you want to go. But if it's unhealthy, it's different. There's a fine line there. I think to be successful in any walk of life, you have to be a bit obsessive. So I think that there's an awareness around that. I know I accept the point about the elite nature of it, and I'm not just talking as a kind of a pushy parent. I'm talking as in general in terms of obsession, because if you want to be successful, you have to be obsessive in some manner. And I remember reading a book. I found it hard to switch off during the Waterford gig. Like, you know, I even find it hard now that I'm out of it to switch off. But that's naturally, if you're that way inclined. And I remember reading that it's okay to have an abnormal high levels of concentration at times. So, you know, it might be sound abnormal, but it's okay because that's your way. If you're thinking, and that's, you know, without overthinking. So I think I just don't know. I don't know how to answer the question, how to get that right, that transition period. The question about the rugby, the soccer, the hurling. I don't know, because if you have the ability to see something in your child as well that could be different and could be, you know, I'm not saying he could make you a fortune. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, but there might be something in him or her that needs pushing as well, you know, and can make a difference to his life or her life.
Just on that point, you know, Darren Sweetenham, he played both hurling and rugby. He played in an All-Ireland semi-final for Cork, and he's playing rugby for Munster. You know, the decision doesn't have to be made at 16, 17. Like, he loved hurling and he was going to go all the way with hurling, and then he came in with Munster at the under-20 level, and he's just a naturally gifted athlete, and you know, he wasn't particularly overly good at just rugby, and he was an unbelievable hurler, but he decided then at 20 that he was going to go down the rugby route, and you know, that was a very tough decision for him to do, because he was probably better at the hurling at the time, but he saw, you know, he enjoyed the rugby and he enjoyed the career that he could possibly have with Munster, and that's the route he took. And you know, you speak to him today and he's delighted with the decision he made. You know, he's played for Ireland now, and he's making a good career out of it. And I think, you know, we get overly obsessed about kids and making a decision on what sport they're going to play, but look, once kids are enjoying themselves, they're enjoying the games they're playing, and I suppose the big thing to give them is just plenty of confidence that, like you said, that you've 40 kids down, like how do you deal with that? You know, you try and give everyone a game, it's tough, but you try and keep everyone involved and give them confidence that they are going to keep pursuing this. And I suppose, look, you will have some that will fall off and probably go down the soccer route and stuff, and look, hopefully that they go with that route and they make a career of that. But I don't think you can be overly obsessed with trying to keep all 40 kids in one group from 13 to minor, because it just doesn't happen.
And I think the corollary as well is that you two guys need to go later in life to your actual chosen sports when you look at you two.
Yeah, exactly. You know, my decision was probably a bit easier because I was really fond of rugby, and I think if you want to become a professional and you want to play at the elite level, you do have to be obsessed, as Derek said, because you have to be driven, you have to want it. It's not just going to get handed to you. But I think when you're dealing with kids and you're dealing with, like, you know, you're going out on the weekend to play a championship match, you might be on the senior team, you might be on the minor team, I think you are driven, but you just have to go out and enjoy it. You can't be thinking too much about the outcome, because at the end of the day, look, you're having fun, you're playing with your friends like what you used to do under 13, under 14, and it's very easy for people to do that. When a team is really successful, you'll keep plenty of players. It's when the team isn't successful and you're going through a tough patch is the tough part.
Yeah, and just on the flip side of that, Tom Devine, a doctor now in University Hospital Waterford, he would have come to me after the 2017 league quarter-final. He scored 2-4 in the league quarter-final. We were beaten by Galway in Pearse Stadium. Came to me on the Tuesday, I'm going to go travelling for the summer. You know, and I just, you're kind of thinking to yourself, Jesus, Tom, we have a chance, I think we have a chance this year, you know. And he said, listen, I like hurling, but I love travelling. That's what he said. You know, and he's such a worldly fella, brilliant young man now, brilliant academic, brilliant lad. and came back for 2018. But I often think with 2017 getting to an All-Ireland final, if Tom was there, with 20 minutes to go, you'd often just...
Oh, I don't know about that
pretend to say those things to yourself. And it's but... And again, this year I think he's in New Zealand for the summer, travelling. He's taken up triathlons. He's an elite athlete that's decided to kind of remain elite, but remain, have the career running in tandem with less competitive sports, if you like. And I think there's decisions that people are making now more than ever.
I think personally in life we all find a place. I was obsessed with sport growing up, every sport. Like, I took up golf because I saw a couple of lads playing golf and it was an afternoon off school. Like, I was like, I'll go and play golf. But every kid wants to just go play sport or play football, hurling, rugby with their friends and go and enjoy it. It's when you get to 18, 19 years old when the decision is kind of taken out of your own hands from a manager or whatever, whether you're good enough, whether you're not, that sometimes, that in the best will in the world, the decision is took out of your own hands. Now you have college, you might move away to Dublin or wherever to college, and you won't be able to get back and play at your club, or you won't be able to give the time to your sport or whatever. But we all find a place in life, and with a bit of help and guidance, like, it doesn't matter whether you're a sportsman or woman or a scientist or whatever. Like, once you're enjoying it, I think that's the important thing. So the choice would be took out of your hands. Where I ended up in my career was took out of my hands. I had to sit and wait for a phone call to go, we want to offer you a contract or whatever. I can't go for an interview and go this is my CV and I'm a good lad and I'll train hard for you and all that. It doesn't work like that in sport, and you get so many setbacks. And it'll be the same as kids growing up. Like, they'll be like, oh, why am I on the B team? And I know Ballygunner have 2 or 3 teams at different age groups now, and because the community is huge out there now. You only have to look at the school, how many kids are there. So they're finding a way to let kids participate and enjoy the sport. And it's all about enjoyment, because if you flog a kid at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, by the time they get to 18, they'll be fed up with the game. And it happens, I see it happen so much in sport, that they're put through the mill, and then they get let down at 18, they go, that's it now, I'm going to go off and do something else. And then maybe later in life they come back and play a bit of football or hurling or probably maybe rugby a little bit less, or probably at club level, because it's, you need to be there for that. But I think at the moment just let the young lad figure it out for himself and enjoy it, and encourage him to whatever path they want to take, and they'll find a way.
Before we go any further, I just want to thank Keating Construction, the sponsors today, for making all this possible. I do often wonder if sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we want the kids who are playing today to be members of the GA club in their 40s and 50s, to be the volunteers and the administrators, and that if we put them off by pushing them too hard and saying that the game is all that matters and the club is kind of irrelevant, then that's not the right message. It's like, you're here for enjoyment, to play whatever sport you can. And as the games emerge, the best talent will rise to the top, and that'll be your senior team. But the players who can't make the senior team, male or female, need to be the backbone of the club and need to be there marking the pitch and doing the coaching courses and looking after the finances and all the stuff that runs a community and makes a club properly. So if it's going to be a proper community organisation, you need the people who aren't the best players to also be interested in coming back.
Oh yeah, that's the Healthy Club project, and I would imagine by the sounds of it in Gaultier and Ballygunner and Passage that there is that you're already a healthy club in terms of probably providing lots of opportunities for physical activity and having a day like today and different people involved. But a big part of it, what Colin would say, is you're a member of your club from when you're born until you're 80 or 90, until the day you leave entirely. And I suppose one of the best examples, I was at a coaching conference years ago, and Crossmaglen GA Club did a kind of a case study, and we all know Crossmaglen has been unbelievably successful, but they're so ahead of their time. Like, at that stage they kind of pretty much identify a role for everyone in the club, like you said there. So they know the guy who probably isn't maybe great at coaching, but he'd be a brilliant organiser, and he might be always have the dressing rooms open. And equally, they have no emphasis whatsoever on success. They've no underage pedigree. They put up all their successes on the slide. There was nothing there, and we all know what they have at senior level. So, like, that it's hard to convince people sometimes that approach will bear fruit. But there's lots of stories in the Health Club project of clubs that were unsuccessful for a long time that are taking this more dynamic approach, community approach, and they're seeing success on the field. Castleblaney would be the same. My own club in Ballinderry and Galway would have had the exact same. So I think there is that element. And I love as well the junior team. You're slagging them yesterday, but at adult level we're very good at having 3 or 4 grades. like we have a tiny club at home in Galway. We've 4 adult grades: we've junior, D, C, A, and then senior. But we're not so good at having that for the under 14s and the under 12s. You know, we kind of, so I think we've a small bit to fill as well in terms of having the equal provision all along.
It would make a lot of sense. Time for 2 more quick questions. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I just want to ask Aoife and a question, and then Colin from the Healthy Club Project might be able to jump in as well. I just want to talk about the whole area of elitism, especially at obviously at inter-county level, and we know we have the Women's Gaelic Players Association, we have the GPA as well. But even though they're great organisations and they're doing some fantastic work with the inter-county player at the highest level, I really think there's a major gap missing between the inter-county scene and the club level scene. So obviously if you're an inter-county player, you're getting the best of resources, you're getting the best counselling, personal development, careers, different areas that you can dip your toe into. Unfortunately, at club level, be it senior, intermediate and junior players, there's an epidemic of losing players rapidly. We're losing players at that level increasingly, okay? Players are heading off every summer to find work, they're heading off because they don't have fixtures, etc. Now, I don't want to get into the whole area of fixtures, but the point I want to make is, to Aoife in the Women's Gaelic Players Association, and you might be able to speak for the GPA as well, I'm not too sure, but where can you see that organisation linking back to the club? Because club players, and I know because I was in different camps, I was in the county setups, I was in club setups, and believe you me, the club player puts in just as much hard work or training without the same level of resources within that club. And it goes back to the point that Jerry was making about if a player feels recognised at junior, intermediate, senior level in their club, be it playing or being looked after by a certain organisation, the more likely that that person is going to stay involved because they feel wanted, they feel part of it, they feel like they're after being more used to just being a GA player. Do you get the point I'm trying to make? So I just want to try and figure out, or pose the question, where can you see the Women's Gaelic Players Association and maybe the GPA and the Healthy Club projects coming back to the player at senior, inter-county and junior level to offer them the support that their counterparts at inter-county level get it, you know.
I think Wayne's getting me back for all the boring lectures I made him sit through. No, I think it's an excellent question. I think every county player is a club player, and I don't particularly like the distinction that we try to force on it and that they don't have the same interests. That's the first thing you are, and it's the last thing you'll be. So there's a massive overlap, and you know, so I think that's to be very clear. There is a different experience with the men and women, but you know, I think you're asking the question in both. I do think there's a role, like in terms of what role can the WGPA and GPA play, I think they need to be part of the conversation, because I think you look at the other side, the county player can often feel excluded and left out and under pressure all the time and torn between the two. But they have a massive role in terms of going back and delivering a good message from what their experience is in county and what you should expect and all of that. Can a players' organisation start to embrace the how many thousands of club players that might be there as well? I think that becomes a difficult proposal. But there you have the Healthy Club project, and when it works well and you have a good healthy club officer, those things now are part, like for me, Healthy Club isn't just about running a nutrition event, it's about the core business of the club. And Wayne, you pointed out, one of the core business and core issues for clubs at the minute is actual just participation. And do we have the answer for that in terms of what the Healthy Club's role in it yet? No, probably not. It was one of the areas that we kind of went down the nutrition side and things like this, whereas the real issue for clubs is participation and games and retention and dropout. So I think there's a role definitely, but I don't know, do we have the answer? And Colin is probably maybe better placed.
Well, I think, you said you don't want to get into the fixtures topic, but that is probably the biggest issue for club players, and out of that everything else falls. So, I think the club is the unit, the club is the club players' GPA and WGPA. That is what a club is about. it is the core unit of the association, and it provides us with measures and support that the GPA could never offer an inter-county player. And I've been an inter-county player. I've been able to access some of the supports that a professional entity like that can offer. But the support that your own club and community provides way outweighs it and always will. However, the GA has a massive challenge in order to recalibrate the association to ensure that the 2,000 inter-county players aren't wagging the tail of the 250,000 club players in terms of a set calendar. Like I played senior with my club from 1991 to 2014, 15, and I played a lot of soccer. Soccer was probably my first sport. And when I finished up with the club, I was still travelling up and down from Dublin, 6-hour round trips. So I felt I still had a couple of years left in the legs, and I went back then soccer for 2 years there in Dublin. And I had a match every Saturday morning at 12 o'clock. And it was a joy to know that schedule was ahead of me. Now, I was back togging out on the side of pitches and having no showers again. So there's swings and roundabouts here that we have to realise that we have come an enormous way. We are the most complex sporting organisation I have ever encountered. And I'm familiar with a lot of sporting organisations around the world in terms of the number of grades we have, the number of codes we have that we cross club, county, college, schools. There is no easy answer. I think the current president has made a determined declaration that it is the nettle that he wants to grasp, and that he's pulling together the new working group on fixtures at the moment to try sitting down with the CPA, the Club Players Association, the WGPA, the GPA, and the GA loves a committee, as everybody knows, but he is hoping that this here group of people that he's pulling together, and Liam Griffin is involved as well here, that will actually try to put together a consistent pathway that will try to deal with the fixtures issue. But in terms of, as Eva said, the GPA deals with a membership of 2,000. Clubs around the country deal with a playing membership of over 250,000, and that is the primary support unit. The Healthy Club project tries to put an additional support mechanism around that in terms of linking in with different agencies and partnerships, but it all comes back to the club for me.
Yeah, I think it's the central. I think, and everyone wants the same thing in terms of sorting out that issue. Like, try play camogie or ladies football, you don't even get a fixture. You're told to play it on one of these 3 days, and then you ring up and you organise